Some say my future not that bright. Mm. Some say I'm useless, unholy, and I'm not living right. But at the beginning of the day, look in the mirror and say, I am somebody. Oh. Well, I believe the future's in my hand.
Good morning. Get ready for impeachment. A lot in the news today. We'll get to everything. Joining us, first of all, as always, on these Mondays, and we're grateful for his time on these Mondays and for all the service he's given us over the years. Fresh from Morocco, the Reverend Jesse Jackson. Good morning, Reverend.
Good morning, my brother.
How are you this morning?
Very well, sir.
Tell us about Morocco.
Well, the Crash Button Teleconference focused on South-South relations with in Africa. There's a sweep of African development, 7 of 10 fastest-growing economies in the world. And sub-Saharan Africa continues to grow. There's a sense that the Trump tariffs will have a negative effect on growth in third-world countries in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a very significant conference. People continue to be aware of in very great detail of what's happening in America.
It is interesting to me, too. We're just learning, and I just learned this the other day. Tillerson was in Africa when he was fired, Reverend Jackson, and not only was
he was in Mali.
In Mali. Not only was he in Africa, so was Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister. They were trying to achieve a meeting in the same hotel. They both stayed in the same hotel when they were in Africa. And just as they were trying to achieve the meeting, Tillerson was fired. But I just thought that was kind of interesting that they were both there at the same time.
It was evolving into a very significant force as a Secretary of State. With a global worldview, he was communicating the rationale for relating to North Korea and relating to Africa. And he was fired without any sense of dignity. He had a bigger worldview by far than President Trump has, and he was dismissed without dignity. McCabe's dismissal was just downright mean. To take a man 24 hours before he gets his pension and fires him was humiliating. But these guys will also be eligible to testify.
Mm-hmm.
And so to anger those who have so much information seems to me a strategic mistake, which also a gesture of meanness. Is far beneath the dignity of our quest for justice, and he just may very well just suspect this in his $5 million. It will test congressional leadership. That's why, while all the focus is on Trump and his entertainment tactics and antics, our focus remains on voter registration. We must keep our eyes on what we can do. You keep looking at Trump and be entertained by him. There are 4 million blacks in the South who are not registered, 2.5 million who registered who did not vote. If we, in fact, keep our eyes on that prize, we'll have the power to do something about it, not just react to what he's doing. That's my concern. That there's so much Trump in the news that we just end up reacting and not acting and not working.
And getting caught up in that. What are some of the ways and some of the things you're doing presently, Reverend, to see to it that we register some of those 4 million across the South?
Say one more time.
What are some of the things that you're doing and some of the things that listeners can get involved in to help register some of those 4 million across the South?
Today, I'm going to Simeon High School and Hyde Park High School. All those high school seniors will be here by November can register and vote this year.
Mm-hmm.
Last week we went to Booker Washington School. And Harvard registered all those high school seniors. There are 4 billion high school seniors that could register and vote. No reason why principals could not convene them and register them. College students who are in college, you get residence and vote before you attend school. Don't say I'm registered. I was at the University of Alabama. That's how many of you are registered. Almost all of them. How many registered in Tuscaloosa? Well, almost none of them. You're not going from Tuscaloosa to Atlanta or Savannah or New York to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Vote before you attend school.
Right.
Re-register. and vote residency. And that could be it. The dust settles. You win by having the power to have voter access.
Yes, sir. Folks, also we should be encouraging people in states to fight for same-day on-site registration too, right? Reverend, you still there?
Yes, I am.
We should also be encouraging people to register for same-day on-site registration too, correct?
That, in addition to that, you also have the right to take someone in the poll. With many people intimidated by the size of ballots, you have the right to take someone in the booth with you to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just go. Whenever I vote, I always take someone in the booth with me.
Mm-hmm.
You also take it with you your sheet of people you intend to vote for.
Mm-hmm.
The right to take with you your what they call a crib sheet in the poll, and the someone to help you do your voting. That's perfectly legal.
Yeah, that is perfectly legal. Reverend Jesse Jackson with us. Lastly, Reverend Jackson, have you had a chance to look at or react to this news of these bombings we're hearing about down in Austin, Texas?
It's strange and it's dangerous. It shows how dangerous the world is in which we live.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's potential.
I don't know what to say about them except it's be careful.
There is some evidence that some of these bombings are related and that they've been targeting African Americans. We don't know all the details of last night's most recent bombing, but the ones previous to last night seem to be targeting African Americans that are related to each other, some of whom have even been NAACP activists.
Well, there's no sideline in this struggle. We all must be involved, be aware, be sensitive to be careful, and yet be determined.
Yes, sir.
If we keep fighting, we could win this Congress back this year. And that's the eyes on the prize.
Mm-hmm.
This year, we have the power to take the Congress back. That means people like Maxine Waters be chairman of committees. Don't let the entertainment and the version of Trump distract you from the power we have. The only comes from voting, having the right to vote and using it. I have one string guitar, register to vote and vote.
And folks, those of you who are, and I guess all of us are closely monitoring the Trump situation, of course, if he fires Mueller, the reaction to it is to get out and vote.
My column this week, I'm saying this week in my column, everybody's focusing on Trump and Mueller. In the meantime, there's still a rising number of poor people that would move to adopt the case of liberation. Malnourished children are growing in numbers. Mm-hmm. Malnourished children do not develop. So let's focus on what we are saying, our own agenda. Why not hunger and poverty and war? Hunger and poverty and war remains our agenda.
Yeah. Also, Reverend Jackson, big march in Washington, D.C. on this coming Saturday around guns. The students walked out last week. There'll be another walkout on April 20th. I think these young people standing up, and of course we want them all to register to vote as well, those who are eligible. But I think these young people standing up is really something.
What is bequeathed to them that we didn't have, they have the right to march as voters. We can only march and wish we could vote. They have the right to march. If they are marching without the vote, they're those children. If they're registered to vote, they are my distinguished constituents. They have the power to be distinguished constituents. And so there's 750,000 high school seniors in Florida. If all of them register and vote, for example, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I'm going to 2 high schools in Chicago, there's the election in Chicago and Illinois tomorrow. There are 10,000 high school seniors in Chicago who are eligible to register. I'm going to 2 high schools today to get them registered to vote for tomorrow's election.
Now, there's an election. What election is tomorrow in Chicago?
Democratic primary.
And this is for
governor.
So this is the gubernatorial primary tomorrow.
J.B. Pritzker and
okay.
After that tomorrow, and states and the Attorney General and the like. But tomorrow is a big deal in Illinois.
That is tomorrow. Okay, folks. So you want to get out and vote tomorrow? Big election, Democratic primary. Have you gotten involved in that, Reverend, or endorsed anyone in that gubernatorial primary?
No, I have not. I'm not involved in endorsing. I mean, I made a decision about choosing Kennedy over Pritzker.
Okay.
Pritzker took the position that he had the equivocated whether he was going to re-endorse President Obama or not. Then he said that Speaker of the House, Speaker of the Senate, Emil Jones, was crashed. Voting for Jesse Jackson Jr. would be a disaster. And he didn't even know these guys. So him to take that kind of position on our leadership is not fair, but it says a lot about how he sees us in our quest for power.
Yeah.
But I'm not campaigning. I'm focusing really right now on these high school seniors and college students voting.
So for those of you unaware, there was some recordings or transcripts that came out where Pritzker was making some very racial comments about some of the potential candidates to fill the vacant Senate seat for President Obama in the whole Blagojevich scandal. And Blagojevich, of course, now is in prison. And Pritzker said some very ugly things about some of the black candidates who might have been.
He doesn't even know.
That he didn't, right. Emil Jones, who was the Speaker of the Senate, of course, Jesse Jackson Jr. And so tomorrow, folks, those of you in Illinois and Chicagoland, tomorrow is your opportunity to get out and vote and be heard. Reverend Jackson visiting high schools today. I know that the young people will be happy to see you today, Reverend. And I hope all goes well. Thank you for joining us this morning, okay? Reverend Jackson, thank you. And we'll talk again. The Reverend Jesse Jackson